ice cream according to the latest testing results from key consumer group.
Did you know U.S. rules actually forbid some companies from calling their product ice cream? Once milk fat drops below a minimum, it becomes another category altogether, a frozen dairy dessert. That's the loophole we're exposing today as we count down 6 tubs using that trick, and the 2 brands that refuse to cut corners. After this, you'll be reading every label with new eyes. Number 1, Bluebell. You probably trust Bluebell for that homemade taste, but not all nostalgia is natural. The brand built its reputation on being the taste of the South, family gatherings, hand-churned simplicity, and a label that made you think small dairy. That image stuck for decades. People believed they were buying the same creamy formula their grandparents loved. The truth is, that promise doesn't quite match what's in the tub today. Check a label now and you'll start seeing ingredients like gums and stabilizers quietly making their way into flavors that once highlighted cream and sugar alone. These additives are not there for flavor. They're efficiency agents, helping the mix hold air, freeze faster, and last longer on trucks. What slips away in exchange is genuine cream density and the slow melt texture that defined real ice cream. It's like swapping a homemade biscuit for one that's frozen and microwaved. It still fills you up, but the soul is gone. Some of this shift happened after production restarts when costs needed tightening. Reformulation is common in food manufacturing. Ingredient swaps control expense and speed up recovery, but they also signal a pivot from heritage craft to industrial throughput. Once you trade milk fat for cheaper binders, the difference isn't just on paper, it's on your spoon. Bluebell's pecan, pralines, and cream, for instance, carries an enormous sugar load per pint, enough to rival a couple of full sodas in sweetness. That kind of formulation isn't about homemade flavor, it's about stretching product with cheaper solids and masking it with sugar. So the brand that once symbolized authenticity now mixes marketing nostalgia with lab convenience. If that scoop made you sentimental, brace yourself. The next brand didn't just bend tradition, it rewrote the rulebook entirely. Number 2, Breyers. You've seen the word frozen dairy dessert on Breyers tubs, but ever wondered why it isn't called ice cream anymore? The answer hides in a quiet change to the recipe. Breyers started as a proudly simple brand in the 1800s, known for fresh cream, sugar, and real flavor. Back then, its straightforward label was its biggest selling point. No tricks, just honest ice cream. That clean label faded when new formulas dropped below USDA standards for butterfat content. A true ice cream must hit at least 10% milk fat and carry a set ratio of milk solids to air. When Breyers stepped under those numbers, regulators forced a different name. That's how frozen dairy dessert showed up across the aisle. The label looks friendly, but under US law, it's not real ice cream anymore. To fill the texture gap left by missing cream, the company leaned on additives like carrageenan and corn syrup. Carrageenan helps stop melting and separation. Corn syrup brings sweetness that once came from real dairy sugars. Together, they extend shelf life, lighten cost, and make mass production easier. But they also replace the flavor depth cream provides. It's like stretching pancake batter with water. It cooks faster but tastes thinner. Those shortcuts didn't go unnoticed. Lawsuits pointed out how some vanilla claims drew flavor from lab extracts, not beans, echoing the transparency gap that frustrates shoppers. And yet the branding hasn't changed. Classic black and white still signals tradition, even while the formula behind it gets cheaper. Here's the truth. What sits in your freezer may carry the same name your parents trusted, but legally and nutritionally, it's a different creation. Breyers shows how nostalgia can mask a chemistry experiment disguised as dessert. Now that you've seen how labeling language bends rules, wait until you meet a brand that hides behind the health halo instead. Number 3, Halo Top. Halo Top markets itself as guilt-free indulgence. But is it really ice cream or chemistry? Look at any pint and you'll see the big calorie number printed right on the front. That's part of the hook. Eat the whole thing, no guilt. It sounds perfect, but the secret to keeping those calories low isn't less food. It's different food. This brand carved out its identity among calorie counters by stripping away sugar and fat, then filling the gaps with erythritol, stevia, and processed fibers like inulin or soluble corn fiber. These ingredients make the math work on paper. They sweeten without the same calorie hit, and they add volume that mimics cream. But your body doesn't digest sugar alcohols the way it digests real sugar. Erythritol passes through mostly undigested, taking water with it, which can cause gas, bloating, and stomach upset when eaten in quantity. Health groups have warned about this. They note that these additives are safe in moderation, but easily overdone when the label encourages you to finish the pint. At 8 grams of sugar alcohol per serving, that's a lot for the gut to handle. Lab studies even suggest links between emulsifiers like cellulose gum and possible inflammation in the digestive tract. So the promise of healthier ice cream starts looking more like a balancing act between chemistry and comfort. The taste trade-off is real too. Sugar alcohols trick your tongue with cold sweetness, but lack the clean flavor and melt of dairy sugar, leaving an aftertaste some try to hide with extra flavoring. Here's the kicker. The pint that claims light and healthy can hit your digestive system like a marathon snack binge. Low calorie doesn't mean low impact, especially when your stomach pays the price. Next up, a budget aisle favorite that uses a different trick: cutting the cream completely. Number 4. Great value, Walmart. That bargain carton in your freezer might not even be ice cream at all. Great value, Walmart's in-house label, grabs shoppers with its massive tubs and family-friendly prices. On the shelf, it looks generous, half the cost and twice the size of name brands. But look closely at the fine print and that bargain starts to melt away fast. Many of those cartons aren't true ice cream. They're labeled frozen dairy dessert, a subtle but legal admission that the formula doesn't meet the USDA's 10% milk fat rule. Check the back panel, and the first ingredient often isn't milk or cream. It's corn syrup. That one swap changes everything. Corn syrup bulks up the mix and sweetens cheaply, but it strips away the creamy body real dairy provides. You end up with something lighter, sweeter, and icy, not smooth. The trade saves money for the company, but costs you the richness you expect from a real scoop. Because the milk fat is gone, factories rely on stabilizers like carrageenan and cellulose gum to fake texture. They hold air, stop ice crystals, and keep the surface glossy under freezer lights. It's engineering, not churning. These fillers cushion the low-fat base so you still get that clean scoop, but underneath it's more chemistry than cream. They also stretch shelf life, which helps corporate chains manage inventory across hundreds of stores. Here's the truth. Calling it frozen dessert lets big retailers dodge the standards real ice cream must obey. It's a perfect example of how labeling loopholes quietly serve the supplier, not the shopper. That low sticker price hides what you're actually buying. A dessert built from corn syrup and stabilizers instead of milk and sugar. The real cost of cheap is simple. You don't get ice cream at all. But even nostalgia brands you grew up with aren't safe from shortcuts. Number 5. Klondike. What would you do for a Klondike bar? You might want to check what's actually inside first. For decades, that silver square and catchy jingle have been summer shorthand for quick comfort. It's the kind of treat that looks simple. A crisp chocolate shell around a creamy center. But what makes that neat square hold its shape isn't just milk and sugar. The inside of a Klondike bar isn't traditional ice cream. It's a formula built from vegetable fats like palm oil, stabilizers, and emulsifiers that create a smooth, light texture. That airy feel isn't an accident. Palm oils and gums like cellulose or carrageenan replace heavy dairy cream, making the center less dense and more resistant to melting. This matters for mass production. Bars can stay solid in warm loading docks and survive long truck routes without turning to soup. Those same additives also let factories churn out bars faster and cheaper. Vegetable fat costs less than real cream and doesn't spoil as easily. Emulsifiers keep everything blended, gums trap water, and the chocolate shell acts like armor against heat. It's smart engineering, but it isn't old-fashioned ice cream. When you bite into that glossy center, you're tasting a design built for logistics, not flavor. Ingredient lists back it up: corn syrup before cream, vegetable oil instead of milk fat. Each stabilizer has a job: hold air, slow melting, preserve sheen, but together they swap richness for durability. That's why a Klondike bar can sit in your freezer for months and still look perfect the moment it's unwrapped. Here's the truth. The nostalgic ads highlight summer fun and simple pleasure, but under that image sits a frozen dairy dessert, engineered to last, not melt. What feels like ice cream on a stick is really dessert science optimized for shelf life, not genuine cream taste. And speaking of vanished cream, another East Coast favorite earns the same criticism. Number 6. Friendly's. Friendly's built its reputation on childhood sundaes, but those scoops aren't what they used to be. The brand began in diner booths where the ice cream came straight from the back freezer to your table, heavy with real cream and sugar. Over time, Friendly's found its way into grocery freezers, and that shift changed more than just convenience. Once the restaurant and ice cream operations split under different ownership, cost control became the quiet driver behind every pint you see on the shelf. When you open a retail carton today, the texture feels lighter, the flavor thinner. That's because the new formulas lean on fillers rather than cream. Ingredients like cellulose gum, mono and diglycerides, and corn syrup solids create the illusion of smoothness without the dairy load. Cellulose gum traps water to imitate structure, corn syrup adds sweetness that used to come from milk sugar, and emulsifiers keep everything from separating while it sits in storage. The outcome looks fine on top, but underneath the old cream base is gone. These shortcuts didn't happen overnight. As corporate ownership shifted, the focus moved to shelf life and transport cost. Each change stripped away a little more of what made Friendly's ice cream taste homemade. After plant consolidations and executive handoffs, stabilizers replaced ingredients that once came from local dairies. What used to be a small batch dessert tied to a restaurant brand is now an industrial product optimized for profit margins. Here's the truth. Friendly still sells the same nostalgic image, complete with the red label and Friendly script. But inside those tubs, you're getting a stabilizer smoothie, a frozen blend engineered to imitate the flavor of its past. At this point, you might wonder, does any major brand still make real cream ice cream? Two do. Number 1, Hagen-Dazs. While others cut corners, Hagen-Dazs quietly kept its ingredient list under 10 items. That's rare in a market where food labels read more like chemistry sets. The brand's secret isn't a lab breakthrough, it's restraint. Their base still starts and ends with milk, cream, eggs, and sugar. No gums, no starch thickeners, no hidden syrups pretending to be cream. You taste dairy because it's actually there. That minimalism costs more. Real cream and slow production don't come cheap, which is why a pint of Hagen-Dazs sells above the bargain shelf. But that higher price isn't a marketing game. It reflects what's inside. High butterfat gives the product body, while slower churning traps less air. You get a dense, velvety scoop that melts, not collapses. Others rely on stabilizers to hold shape. Hagen-Dazs lets real texture speak for itself. The difference is the kind you feel on your tongue and remember after the carton's gone. Under USDA rules, ice cream must contain at least 10% milk fat. Hagen-Dazs holds that line and often exceeds it, which keeps the label honest. The company doesn't need frozen dairy dessert disclaimers because its formula complies with old-school standards. That's part of why its ingredients fit neatly on one line instead of scrolling like a paragraph. Fewer inputs mean fewer questions for your body to answer later. Here's the truth. The brand's consistency built trust the hard way, by resisting shortcuts other manufacturers embraced years ago. Each pint is proof that purity still earns loyalty. When real cream, real eggs, and real sugar meet slow churning, you get actual ice cream, not an illusion of it. Hagen-Dazs proves the gold standard still exists. Simple ingredients, genuine cream taste. And there's one more safe pick committed to that same integrity, though it takes an activist spin. Number 2, Ben & Jerry's. Beyond quirky names and fair trade sourcing lies, another reason Ben & Jerry's stands apart, it's still true ice cream. That means full dairy cream, real eggs, and thick swirls built from actual flavor, not syrup substitutes. When you dig into a pint, you're tasting honest butterfat, the part of milk that gives body and flavor depth. It's what separates an ice cream that melts on your tongue from one that collapses into sweet foam. Big ownership usually changes things, but this brand managed to hang on to the good stuff. Despite being part of a large corporation, its recipes stayed rich, keeping butterfat levels well above the federal threshold. That's what keeps it inside the legal definition of ice cream, instead of sliding into frozen dairy dessert. It's a rare case where scale didn't erase quality. Where other products lean on gums to fake smoothness, Ben & Jerry's still relies on dairy fat to do the job nature intended. The brand's transparency is just as strong as its taste. Ingredient lists show whole cream first, sugars second, and no synthetic gums as primary thickeners. Each flavor meets fair trade certification standards, meaning the cocoa and sugar are sourced with oversight rather than empty claims. That ethical commitment runs parallel to its ingredient honesty. They both rely on documentation you can actually read. Here's the truth. Premium butterfat delivers the creamy mouthfeel people notice. but it also serves another purpose. It resists dilution. Real cream binds flavor and air in balance, so the scoop holds its body without needing hidden stabilizers. That's why Ben & Jerry's can stay authentic even at mass scale. It's one of the last major brands still proud of what's printed on the label. Proof that real ice cream doesn't just taste better. It's built to stay real. Perfect moment to close by, teaching how to spot the real deal every time you shop. The first 3 ingredients tell you everything. If you see milk, cream, and sugar first, you're holding real ice cream. If the list starts with corn syrup, vegetable oil, or stabilizers, you're buying a frozen dairy dessert. That difference isn't just legal, it shapes taste, texture, and even how your body handles it. Skip anything using high fructose corn syrup or carrageenan and high on the list. Choose tubs where whole milk still leads. Always check the label before you check the price tag. Real cream belongs up front, not buried in fine print. Subscribe now and I'll show you what to avoid and what's actually safe.